Okay, so get ready, because today we're diving into a book that's been called, well, a lot of things. Dangerously seductive, downright terrifying. We're talking Might is Right by the mysterious Ragnar Redbeard. And yeah, that name kind of hints at what we're dealing with here. Published back in 1896, but get this book, it was actually suppressed, buried for centuries.
Centuries, wow. That's something that explosive, that challenging to how people saw the world. They tried to make it disappear.
Like finding a hidden manuscript in some old library, right? You
Yeah.
just know it's got to be something big.
Yeah.
And it is. Redbeard, he argues that might is right. But it's not just how things are. It's like the law of nature, a guiding principle for us, for society,
Yeah.
whether we want to admit it or not.
And he really goes all in on this, doesn't he? Like, throws out conventional morality completely. Compassion, selflessness, even love chains, he calls them.
Hmm.
Tools used by the weak to control the strong.
Wait, so being good, that's weakness.
That's what he's saying. And it gets wilder. He attacks the thou shalt nots, the rules, religious, legal, all of it. Even goes after figures like Jesus.
No way. What, like a philosophical debate with Jesus? What's his argument there?
Not just any critique. He calls Christianity magnificent Satanism. Definitely gets your attention. But the core of it, it's not about love or peace themselves. It's that those ideas, they create systems, right? And in those systems, the powerful get held back and the powerless, well, they get emboldened.
So he's like flipping the entire script. Instead of praising cooperation, peace, all that, he's saying strength, conflict, dominance, that's the natural order.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest, but like on a societal level.
Exactly. And to make his point, he paints these vivid pictures. Lions, eagles, tigers, apex predators. They're like symbols of pure power in his writing. Then he contrasts them. Sheep, prey animals. You can practically hear the lions roar when you read some of this stuff.
Intense. So war then, it's not a tragedy to Redbeard. It's like essential, part of the process.
A vital force.
Yeah.
Weeds out the weak, ensures only the strongest survive. He points to the Spartans, the Roman Empire societies built for war, and for a time, they dominated completely.
And this all goes back to his thoughts on equality, right?
Right.
Which he's not a fan of.
Despises it, calls it a dangerous fantasy. Something the weak came up with to level the playing field. He'd say, those who can't compete on their own, they invent these ideas.
Okay, so if that's all fake, then what's real? If equality is a myth, what does Redbeard say is the truth?
He doesn't sugarcoat it. Inequality, it's natural, it's everywhere, he says, woven into life itself. You see it in the animal kingdom, all throughout human history, it's unavoidable. Masters and slaves, rulers and the ruled, he'd say, see, this is just how humans are, it's natural.
Brutal. And it makes you think, when you look at it that way, about the power dynamics, right? They've always been there in human societies. But if you thought that was intense, strap in, because it gets even more unsettling. He starts trying to justify things like cannibalism, exploitation.
And he'll pull examples from history, anthropology, tries to make the case that these aren't like aberrations, but expressions of that natural order, the brutal one. For example, he talks about this awful scene, the Valley of Death in Java, wild dogs eating turtles, then a tiger comes and eats them. This cycle of power and survival, he says, it's just nature's way.
Gruesome and disturbing. And it gets more unsettling when he connects this to everyday life. He even says the clothes we wear, the houses we live in, all byproducts of exploitation, conquest throughout history.
Yeah, it's a really uncomfortable thought, but it does make you think about how it shows up, even in the ordinary parts of our lives.
So far, not exactly a sunny picture Redbeard's painting. If might makes right, and things like equality, morality, if those are illusions, then what's the point? Why even try to make a better world?
And this is where owning property, gaining wealth, that's key for Redbeard. He argues that's the only way individuals, you and me, can have any real freedom, any power. You want to control your own destiny, got to control resources.
So it's about taking control, but not for everyone. He's not talking about utopia or everyone sharing everything.
No, he hates the idea of working for someone else, depending on others. Ultimate weakness. He likes what he calls gamecocks. People who forge their own path, take risks, take what they want. He even quotes Thomas Carlyle, says, whoever has sixpence commands cooks to feed him, philosophers to teach him, kings to mount guard over him. Wealth, it's power, pure and simple.
So it's a dog-eat-dog world. But instead of teeth, it's all about the size of your, bank account? Portfolio.
In a sense, yeah, but there's a danger to embracing that fully, isn't there? A world without compassion, empathy, where everyone's just out for themselves.
Like everyone becomes a mini tyrant.
It's definitely extreme, his philosophy, no doubt about that. And it could be twisted easily to justify some pretty awful stuff.
Okay, but it's not like he's saying go out and be brutal, right?
Not exactly. He's saying that struggle, conflict, that's what drives progress, shapes history. It's the clash, that's what matters.
Right, okay. But that's nations, empires, that kind of scale.
Yeah.
What about us? Just everyday people. How does might makes right play out on a personal level?
Think about it. Competition. It's everywhere, every day. Trying to get ahead, to get what we need, reach our goals. At work, in our relationships, even just life in general, there's this drive, right? To assert ourselves, to gain an advantage.
So not always a physical fight, but still a strategy. Like there's power dynamics in everything.
You got it. And Redbeard, he understood that. That's why wealth, property, those were so important to him. You have those. You answer to no one. You make your own terms. You're the master.
On your own, individually, sure, it makes sense. But take it too far. Doesn't that fall apart? Everyone for themselves. Compassion, empathy, just gone.
You're hitting on a really important point, and it's something people still debate, even now. His philosophy, it's radical, and yeah, it could be misused, used to justify some really bad things.
So where does that leave us? Are we just supposed to accept this? Might makes right? That's it? End of story? No point trying to make things fairer, more equal?
Not at all. The point of looking at a book like Might is right. It's not to just agree with it. It's about using it as a way to think critically, to examine what we believe about power, about morality, about the systems we live in. A thought experiment.
So more about letting his ideas challenge us, make us really think about these things.
Exactly, because here's the thing. Even if we reject his conclusions, the questions he's asking, they're important. Let's say, just for a second, that might makes right. Then what about the people making the laws, controlling the stories we hear, the information? Where's the real power lie? Is it brute strength or is it something else?
Whoa. Because Redbeard, he wrote this book. He used words to persuade. He wasn't like conquering nations or anything.
And don't forget, he published it under a fake name. He knew the power of being anonymous, of using words in a strategic way. He didn't want us to agree. He wanted us to think, to wrestle with these ideas.
It's like that saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. But in this case, the pen is making us question the sword itself. Who gets to use it, you know?
Exactly. And that's what makes Might is Right so interesting. Uncomfortable, sure, but fascinating. It makes us confront how power really works on a big scale and in our own lives.
It's like he's saying, even having the best argument, the strongest words, none of it matters unless you've got the might to back it up.
Right. And for Redbeard, that might, it often came down to, well, who's got the gold? Remember, property and wealth, those were huge EE for him. But it's deeper than just stuff, right? He saw them as tools, like instruments of power.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you. It's that Carlyle quote, right? Sixpence.coms.cooks.philosophers.kings. So money equals control, not just comfort.
Exactly. Economic power, it turns into social control, even intellectual control. The pen might be mighty, sure, but who's got the printing press? Who's distributing the ideas? That's where the real power plays out, according to him.
Man, it's like he was writing this for the 21st century. Think about it. Tech giants, the media, Wall Street, they're not swinging swords around, but their influence, it's everywhere, right?
It's inescapable. They shape what we know, what we buy, how we even talk about politics. I think Redbeard, he'd look at them and say, there's your mighty for the modern age.
And we're just starting to grasp how much power they actually have.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, exciting and scary all at the same time. When you really think about Redbeard's ideas, even just as a thought experiment, it changes how you see things.
It's a different lens, for sure. Not saying we should all agree with them, not at all, but might is right. It's a powerful tool, you know, for understanding how power works. Throughout history and even now, makes you question everything.
So it's not about finding all the answers in this book. It's more like he's giving us the questions.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's on us to figure out what we believe.
Exactly. He'd want us to be skeptical of authority, of easy answers, to look for the power dynamics at play in every situation.
So as we wrap up here, our deep dive into Redbeard in this wild ride through Might is Right, what's the one thing we want to leave people with?
Don't be afraid of challenging ideas. Redbeard's work, yeah, it's extreme, can be tough to stomach, but that's the point. It forces us to confront some hard truths about power, and that, honestly, that's what makes us think more clearly, more critically, about the world, about ourselves.
So be aware, be critical, be your own gamecock, right? Forge your own path.
Absolutely, because in a world where might often does make right, the most powerful thing you can do is think for yourself.
That's a great place to end it. So keep those words in mind from Ragnar Redbeard, this mysterious figure from way back when. And remember, no one can take away your ability to think, to question, to challenge. That's real power.